Have you ever wanted to play blazing fast lines like Charlie Parker or Cannonball Adderley? To do so, we need to get our technique together. Now, before we get into it with our fingers, I'd recommend you check out this video on saxophone tone, which is going to give you the foundation of a great embouchure and good breath support, which is going to support everything that we do in our fingers. Now let's get into all things fingering, and to start, get as relaxed as possible. So I like to start by doing some shoulder rolls. Make sure your shoulders are always relaxed. You never want them to start creeping up hunched like this, because that's going to introduce a lot of tension into your body. So if you ever feel that happening while you're playing, just do some shoulder rolls forward and backward to get them relaxed. And then you can do some neck stretches side to side. And this is good to do before any practice session or performance. Our neck is what constitutes a lot of our sound, and that's basically where everything's coming from. So we really want that to be nice and relaxed. Then finally, go ahead and take some deep breaths. Make sure that you have good posture, feet solidly planted on the floor. And to warm up our forearms, I like to do this thing where you basically just scrunch your fingers together, making fists, and you'll feel the tendons in your arms working. You don't have to do too hard, just enough that you can feel your arms warming up a little bit. You can also do imaginary playing the piano, pressing down fingers quite firmly. This is all just gonna warm up our hands. And then finally, after doing that for some time, you can just grab one wrist at a time and roll gently one way and then the other way on both hands. And that's just gonna physically warm up your whole body before we even start playing the saxophone. I really recommend you don't skip this step, because sometimes when we're diving into really long technique sessions, it can put a lot of strain on our bodies, and the last thing you wanna do is injure yourself. So take your time in warming up your body, and now let's start focusing on the saxophone. So now that you have your saxophone in hand, make sure that your neck strap is to the right position, where if you bring the saxophone to your mouth, it goes quite naturally right there. You're not going far down like this or reaching up. It just comes right to you. You're not going towards it. For our hand position, you're gonna want a nice sort of C round shape. Nothing that's gonna be really tense and tight, just nice and gentle. When I was a beginner, one thing I did that you don't want to do, this would be bad technique, is I would almost concave my hand in this really scary looking shape, and it just introduced a lot of tension that you really don't want. Instead, shake your hand out and make it nice and round, almost like you're just holding a ball, and just let your fingers come naturally to the pearls, creating this relaxed hand position. So with the palm keys on the side here, we want them to be pretty close to our palms so that we're not having to travel a large distance to push them down. My hands are quite small, so my saxophone works naturally already, but if you have larger hands and you're finding there's quite a bit of distance for you to travel, you can actually get palm key risers to put on, and then it will minimize that distance and help you have better technique in this left hand here. One thing you'll notice if you watch great saxophonists, especially Charlie Parker, is that when he plays, it almost looks like his fingers aren't even moving, even when he's playing very, very quickly. Now the reason this is because he keeps his fingers on the pearls at all times. So what you don't want to do is have what we call flying fingers. This is very common with beginners, especially when we're playing these palm keys. So for example, if I was going to play a high A going to a palm D, here's what it would look like with bad technique and flying fingers. See how they're flying off the keys? Now you want to be like Charlie Parker, so keep them them on the keys at all times. You can actually imagine there's a little dot of glue on your pinky holding it to that G sharp key. You're not actually going to be pressing it down, it's just laying there lightly. Remember, keep out the tension, keep everything nice and light. And we're going to do it again, and we're not going to have any flying fingers. Keep your fingers all on the pearls. So try that a couple times, and I'd highly recommend you get a mirror to do this because sometimes you may not even notice you have them, and check for both hands to make sure that's not happening. If you don't have a mirror, you can always record yourself and watch the video back. Something I used to do a lot when I was in band classes, and maybe the leader was working with other sections, because you don't actually have to play. You can just finger and watch your hands and make sure that nothing is flying up. So when you do your scalp practice, this is something to really focus on. One thing with your technique that I want you to do is isolate the problem areas. So for many people, this is going to occur from going G sharp to A. You can see there's actually 2 fingers moving here, but this actually isn't necessary. We can keep down that G sharp pinky key and then only move the ring finger. And you're gonna see that's gonna be a lot easier to coordinate than doing both fingers at the same time. So if I did both fingers at the same time, there's more of an increased risk for blips like this. See, there's like another note in there that we don't want. Whereas if you just only move the ring finger, that's gonna eliminate that from happening. Another problem area that beginners have is going from B natural to C natural. If you don't time this perfectly, you'll actually hear the C sharp blip through. There's that little blip in there. So practice this a couple times to get it perfect with the timing so you don't hear that. It should sound like this. You can also do this exercise a little faster to make sure you can do it at faster tempos like this. But if you need to trill this B key with the C, I'd actually recommend using this side C key here right in the middle, and that's just gonna make it much faster for you. A couple other alternate fingerings we can go over is our B flat has a couple. The one I use most commonly is called biz key B flat, and it's where we're going to be pushing down these top 2 pearls with 1 finger, just like that. The other fingering is where you finger an A and you add the bottom side key here. And then one other fingering that I actually never use, but I know some people do, so I'll still put it out there in case you'd like to, is 1 and 1 on both hands. So I find that if I've practiced this motion like I was just talking about, then the biz key B flat to C really isn't an issue for me because I've practiced it. But some people do prefer just going from A to the side key B flat because it can be a little bit easier, especially for beginners who aren't used to this motion. But either one, they're both good to have in your toolbox. A couple other alternate fingerings you should be aware of is our high E fingering, where we're typically doing the 2 palm keys with the top side key on our right hand. We can do what we call front E fingering, which is where we're going to play the front F key and the bottom 2 fingers here with the octave key. They have a little bit of a different timbre. I usually like to use the palm keys if I'm staying below the altissimo range, but if I am going up to altissimo, then typically I'll opt for the one using this front F key here. So use both of those according to your discretion and where you're heading in the range of your horn. One other tricky area is this low C sharp to B flat. It can be quite a lot of work for our pinky to make that transition. You're really going to want to take use of these rollers here. That's how we're gonna make that transition smooth. So try that one a couple times. And then try it from B flat to C sharp. Those are most of the problem areas that I see with my students. Once you have mastered those, you should be in pretty good shape. In line with talking about that high E key and those low B flat notes, I want you to remember not to avoid the extreme ranges of the horn. A lot of intermediate to beginner players are really comfortable in the mid-range of the horn, but when they get down lower, their air support might give out or their fingers just get clumsy, especially with the palm keys. So please don't neglect those. Spend extra time on them and try different scale patterns on them. I'll show you some of my favorite scale patterns to practice. So of course you should know all 12 major scales, and once you do, one pattern I like to do is what I call up 3 down 1. So I'll demonstrate it for you on a G major scale. Take that one through all 12 major scales, and that's going to help your brain and your fingers get to know each scale deeper. And of course, you don't have to just limit yourself to the major scales. You can do this on all sorts of them: chromatic, diminished, bebop, whatever suits your preference. The next scale pattern that I like to do is up a third, down a second. Of course, you can always take these scales full range to make sure you're hitting those extreme ranges, or 2 octaves if you're still working up to that. When you're doing your scales, I also like to have my students always follow them up with arpeggios. That can be a great one to get to know your scales better and practice that technique. You can do them diatonically, so this is how those arpeggios would sound on G major. I have tons more exercises like this one, so if you're looking for more scale patterns than just what I've showed you in this video, click the link below to set up a one-on-one consultation with me to see if you'd be a good fit for my private lesson studio, and we can definitely discuss more of those together. When you're practicing anything with your technique, make sure to hone in on the details, because that's where everything really matters. So watch out for little blips like we've talked about. Watch out for flying fingers. Remember to support everything with good breath support, and just be really careful to make sure you're paying attention to all those things. Again, you can always record yourself and watch it back, and that's a great way to double check yourself. So whenever you're trying to increase speed, we're gonna wanna do this with our metronome and take it as slow as you need to do it perfectly, and then increase the tempo by 5 to 10 beats per minute for every 5 times you can do it correctly in a row. If you mess up on the 4th time, do it again until you can do it 5 times correctly in a row without stopping. Then bump up the tempo slightly. So this will work for your scales, your arpeggios, any repertoire you're working on, even when you're working on improvisation. I would always recommend working very closely with the metronome. Now let's take a measure that has a lot of 16th notes, and we're gonna work on it together, but before just trying to dive in and just go for it, there's a really cool exercise that will help you get your technique together really well. So what we're gonna do is we're almost gonna swing it, where we're gonna play every other note long and then the notes in between all those notes short. So when you do this exercise, the snappier you can do it, the better. So you don't need to do this in time. It can be as loose as you need it to be, or as slow as you need it to be, as long as the actual transitions between the notes are quite quick. You want to make sure the visualization is really there. So for example, it may sound like this. Now Now, if it takes you a couple times to get that down, don't worry, that's totally normal. It can feel a little wonky to start playing it in this different rhythm if you're used to playing it straight. But do that a couple times, just long, short, long, short, long, short. And now we're gonna switch it. So it's kind of like the opposite of swing. Short, long, short, long, short, long. Because we've practiced it both ways, we're basically working on the transitions between each of those notes. Now when you play it regularly, it should sound a lot more even, smooth, and you should be able to play it with better technique. So focus on the notes being paired together 2 by 2, and then of course you'll switch it when you go from long short to short long. So that's something I would use all the time whenever I'm practicing classical especially, and it also works well with jazz. Now don't forget what I said at the beginning. If you feel yourself starting to tense up during any of these exercises, just go ahead and put the horn on the ground or on your sax stand, whatever you have, and just check for tension again. So again, you can roll back your shoulders. Take some deep breaths. See where there's that tension and just shake it out. Let yourself get loose. If you have to do this every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, doesn't matter as long as you're staying nice and relaxed. That's gonna be the biggest thing to help you have good technique. If you've made it this far in the video, I can tell you're dedicated to your practice, and I'd like to invite you to click the link below and sign up for a one-on-one consultation to be invited to join my private lesson studio. The first 3 students to sign up will get $15 off their first month. So I'd love to meet you, get to know your goals, see where you want to go with the saxophone. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. Comment down below any other questions you might have or what you'd like me to cover in the next video, and make sure to like and subscribe. Bye!